find it crazy that I came across this tweet on the same day that I wanted to make a video about nature continuity being used as justification for the ill treatment of homosexuals. The tweet says SA's biggest downfall was when Mbeki signed the homosexual bill on the 30th of November 2006 due to pressure from the US and the West. Today, men are competing with women. SA is now seeing a drop in both marriages between men and women, including a drop in birth rates. This is a crisis. And what's crazy is that I believe that this conversation is way bigger than just homophobia. It actually is about religion. It's about the decline in our environment. It's also about capitalism. So for a little bit more context, I went to a Catholic primary school and moved to a Catholic high school. I used to be an altar server. I would serve from Monday to Friday. I was captain of the Bible quiz team for exactly 2 days until I quit. So the first time I came across the concept of nature continuity being used as justification for being homophobic was in a religious context. So when I was in grade 9, we went to, they called it an RE camp, but to be honest, it was a sex camp. Do I believe in comprehensive sex education? Yes, only when it is factual and paced correctly. Now, this was not comprehensive sex education. It was filled with a lot of misinformation as well as Christian fear-mongering. And there was this one teacher who was part of the teachers who were in charge of the camp, and he had like the mid-afternoon session, and his sessions were centered around fruitfulness, right? So basically, in a Catholic context, a marriage is only valid in the eyes of God if it is total, fruitful, and free. The things that he was mainly speaking about was the fruitful aspect of the marriage. And he went on to say that the reason why he doesn't believe that a gay marriage is valid in the eyes of God and should be valid in the state is because it is not fruitful. He said the ultimate goal of human relationship is to procreate, and that a marriage that does not yield children is not valid. In fact, he went on to say that he believes as though homosexual sex serves nothing but pleasure. It's just for pleasure and nothing else because sperm can't fertilize shit droplets. I think that's also when I started to realize that a lot of my issues with the Bible have a lot to do with the fact that the Bible hasn't done a really good job of adapting to our current context. That it can't realistically be used to remedy our contemporary social issues. Because the Bible was written in a patriarchal context, but also, it was written in the context of higher society. In terms of demographics, what were the context, the population, the kind of people in that population? What were the race dynamics, the cultural dynamics? But also, what was the state of the planet in the context in which the Bible was written in, right? Because even with this teacher, he got choked up, right? So a boy asked him and was like, well, he's been with his wife for about 10 years and they had a baby and they had another one on the way during the time of this camp. And a boy asked him, okay, so every time you and your wife engage in sexual intercourse, is the ultimate goal to have a baby? Because remember what he said, that he feels like the ultimate goal of homosexual sex is simply pleasure and not procreation, right? Because it's physically impossible. And he thought he ate, but in fact he made things worse for himself by saying that, well, on the calendar, him and his wife have marked the days in which that align with her cycle, blah, 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 blah. Obviously, they're not gonna have a baby every time they have sex. Then the boy was like, but you see that you also do prioritize pleasure in your sexual life, even as this devout Catholic family, right? With this marriage that is total, fruitful, free, and in accordance with the constitution of marriage and validity in the eyes of God. Then it got me thinking about also the fact that people complain about plummeting birth rates or population. And they always give this silly analogy that if you put homosexual men on a planet together, they would go extinct because they wouldn't be able to create new life. Or if a country was just filled with homosexual men and there was an absence of women, it'd all die, no new life. But what if I said that human beings going extinct wouldn't be the worst thing ever? Guys, there's a fly here or something, I don't know. Because in the context of the Bible, there weren't 60 million people living in South Africa. There weren't 8 billion people on the planet yet. And when we say that we need to continue human life, we need to continue nature, that is deeply self-centered and narcissistic. Because if the human race were to go extinct, the planet would thrive. Did you hear me? If we were to go extinct, the planet would thrive. If human beings were to completely go extinct, there would be no longer be gas emissions that would keep making the planet hotter. The ice caps wouldn't be melting in Antarctica. Our bodies of water would no longer be polluted. And more importantly, animals would thrive without her. I know human beings feel like they're the only life that matters and that we are the only life that isn't like deserves being protected, blah 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 blah, and that animals need us and animals need us for protection. But if you really think about it, animals need protection from us. We're protecting animals from other human beings. If you think about it, if we were to go extinct, these animals would no longer be losing their habitats because of our harmful ways. No one would be poaching them. No one would be harvesting their organs and horns. If we were to go extinct, the planet would start over and find a way to adapt without us. Again, it's one of the failures of the Bible that kind of sets this tone that the planet needs us, when in actual fact it's the other way around. Even on a human level, people say, oh, we need to continue nature, we need to keep having babies. And is this nature that you want to continue? Genocide, women in the Congo being mass raped, mass murdered, people in the Congo being exploited so I can have this damn phone that I'm making this video on? Is that the nature you want to continue? Where Lindiwe Zulu gets to squander 100 million that was allocated towards addressing the GBV crisis in the country? Is that the nature you want to continue? But more importantly, I see this rhetoric and this agenda of keep making babies, making babies, being pushed by the top 1% to really poor people, really poor black people. Obviously, Elon Musk could afford to have 20 kids and none of them would suffer. But what if I said that the existence of poor people greatly benefits the people at the top? If more poor people are making babies, the inequality gap keeps getting wider. The poor people will keep getting poorer and the rich will keep getting richer. The reason why I believe it's propaganda and some sick agenda is because out of nowhere, last year, a lot of non-black writers, politicians, content creators, all of a sudden started saying that telling poor people to stop having babies, encouraging women to be selfish about their wombs is eugenics. Now that got me tripped up because the very same people who've been engaging in eugenics for hundreds of years while denying that they were engaging in eugenics, all of a sudden know the meaning of the word eugenics when they're encouraging poor black people to have babies. You cannot trick me. I really hate that homosexuality is a scapegoat in all of this. Because the reason why they want people to keep having babies is because the more babies poor people have, the more child labor they'll have, the more slave labor they'll have, the more people they'll get to exploit, the more children they'll get to bomb. Even in smaller examples, like Mihlali's takedown of Babel. What do you mean you've been operating since July, it's almost October, and you have 1.6 million unpaid wages? Was that both them and Ocean Basket? I think it was 1.6 on both ends, like combined together. Because you know that poor people, that 100 rand that she made after a couple of days is still more than they had on their own. Poverty also makes you think you don't have rights. But more importantly, you do need some economic privilege to exercise some of your rights under capitalism. Your rights come at a price. Have you guys not noticed that in most minerally rich African countries, I mean, Africa is rich in general with minerals, right? Those are the very same countries with the harshest anti-LGBT legislation. Walk with me here. So crazy that they're the ones who are the biggest victims of the West. Like, their resources completely benefit the West. The West is mining and mining while the people, the natives, continue to live in extreme poverty. And then the heads of those states are cracking down on homosexuality. Well, the family unit, blah, blah, blah. Well, we are not victims of the West. The fact that Europeans and North Americans can mine an unlimited amount in your country, you are the biggest victim of the West. And you think allowing homosexuals to live in peace is going against the West? You are so wrong. It's crazy that people would say the legalization of same-sex marriage in South Africa was because of the US, when the US has only had gay marriages as legal for less than 10 years. They only legalized it in 2015. So our LGBT legislation has always been ahead of the US. Like, please pipe down, stop at the cap. We need a second part. But it's also because, like, if they were to give full rights and liberties to homosexuals, they'd be forced to do the same for women, and they'd have to do it for women first.